Thank you so much for joining us today. Just so that everyone knows, kind of by way of introduction, my name is Annabelle Taylor and I am on the committee here at the London Young Lawyers Group. I'm also working in-house at an NHS trust, doing all things clinical negligence. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course, hi Annabelle, and thank you for that. Yeah, I'm Sam Clague, founder and chief executive of the Stephen James Partnership, legal recruitment firm, and also ED&I consultancy, with a particular focus on Black talent and representation across the legal sector.
You previously done an event with us, which was absolutely fantastic, and thank you so much for coming back. I just kind of wanted to explore that with you. What's changed since we last spoke to you at the D&I event?
Look, it's great to be back. It's great to have the opportunity to talk around some of the things that I've seen in the space, some of the things that have moved on, and perhaps some of the things that haven't moved on. And so I guess in the intervening time, there's been certainly more talk around diversity, and in particular, diversity of ethnic minorities within the legal sector or profession as a whole. And there has been more talk around Black representation in particular. Now, whether that has necessarily transferred into action, I would say is a different question. But what I will address is, are some of the things that I've seen. And I guess we have to start, or it's probably important to start with some of the things that we've tried to do with clients, and then I suppose the question as a whole. So when I initially spoke, we were in the process of launching, or had just launched, a number of programs from grassroots level right through to very senior kind of C-suite and key decision makers within firms and departments, in particular around Black talent representation and also engagement. And we were testing the water, so to speak, with firms' appetite. And I was very frustrated around the lack of take up of some of the programs. So if we fast forward to today, I don't know the exact time, but I'm guessing about 18 months on, there has been a lot more support for some of the work that we've done in the space. And probably in particular, our mentoring program has a huge number of people who are signed up as mentors and also mentees. So from that side of things, I think there has been positive movement. But then I guess that's my own interpretation based on some of the things that we've undertaken as a business. But then I look at the wider picture, and if we look at data, statistics from the SRA at the time I spoke, I think the data suggested that there was about 3% of qualified lawyers were Black. So with the most recent data that came out earlier this year, that's actually reduced by 50% to just under to 2%. So I guess from that perspective, things have changed, but arguably in the wrong direction. So when we look at the question of, well, why has that happened, and what are some of the reasons that have compounded this kind of reduction in representation of Black people in law, I think again that's a huge question, and probably not one that I could address in one go. But what I would say as a summary is that there's definitely been more talk. There's been more opportunity to have certain conversations, and I've certainly had in the last couple of years more access to key decision makers within firms and within legal departments than I've ever had to talk about race and ethnicity, to talk about representation, to talk about Black lawyers, for example. But on the other hand, I still think there's a long way to go, which is probably part of the reason that the theme for this year's Black History Month was action, not words, which, if you may remember back to when I had the first chat with you all, and a lot of the work that I did and a lot of my LinkedIn posts from 2 years ago is action, not words. Guess what? That's not a new message. And I think part of the issue is that we're still in 2022 and towards the end of this year talking about action, not words. There's still too many words. There isn't enough action, which is why we're having to call it out and say it's time for action. So I think with those component parts factored in, look, change in general takes a while, and change within the legal sector, in particular reference to race and ethnicity, takes even longer. It moves at a glacial pace. However, there has been pockets that I've certainly seen of positive change and change for the right reasons. But ultimately, there are less black people that are qualified lawyers today than there were when I last spoke. So for me, that highlights a much broader problem that is largely, I think, focused on retention, engagement, sponsorship, lots of these buzzwords that you probably hear, but actually each on their own are very important, and even more important when you put them together, mixed with the data.
You touched upon the fact that action's not being taken, and actually where we were 2 years ago, we're actually still in the same position. What do you think that law firms or the SRA need to be doing in order to start putting that action into place?
I think there needs to be more positive steps taken more quickly. I think that law as a profession is wonderful, and lots of my friends are lawyers, and I know lots of people that have very successful careers and incredibly fulfilled. But as a profession on the whole, can be quite slow to change. And it's not just across diversity, for example, it could be across different areas. Look at the typical traditional model in which law firms charge for their services, the hourly rate. There's lots of legal departments I speak to that say, why are we still getting billed for hourly rates, or why are we still getting billed in 6-minute increments? So as a sector, I think the legal industry and profession is relatively slow to change at times. And I think for this particular issue, there is no different. So what could organisations, what could the regulators do more of more quickly? Well, I think it's a position now, a couple of years on, since lots of stuff happened in the world that we all know about. And I think it's the time now to start driving through change a little bit more rigorously, and almost only being able to talk about stuff if it is then going to lead to something tangible. And look, I understand from firms and legal departments' perspectives in that no one wants to be hit over the head and told that they're not where they need to be. The reality is that the legal sector as a whole is hugely underrepresented, not just for black lawyers, but for lots of different lawyers. And I think that's often uncomfortable. And we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been lots of people that have popped up as purported experts in ED&I and training and so forth, without actually having any real credibility in the legal sector. So I think there needs to be a lot needs to happen in terms of understanding kind of where the issues are and why there may be issues. And look, let's celebrate where there are success stories. Let's celebrate the black managing partners. Let's celebrate the people that are on the rise, the people that have made it through. Let's celebrate people coming in at different levels and being a top performer in their particular team or department. But let's also recognize that that's probably not happening anywhere near as quickly as it needs to be. And let's look more on the retention side of things, whether that's through organic hiring, whether that's through the organizations or channels through which firms or departments rely on. And because typically organizations that feed into law firms and different departments tend to be demographically often very similar, then we've seen a situation where people are asking at different levels for diverse slates, diverse lawyers, and people are just getting called because they look a certain way. Now, that doesn't do anything. That just kind of kicks the can down the road, so to speak. What I think is across law firms, legal department ecosystems, it's about introducing more businesses that maybe have more direct correlation to what the organizations are looking to achieve. So if you're looking at engaging with more ethnically diverse lawyers, perhaps look at a firm or a number of firms that have lots of people from that sort of makeup as part of their executive group, in terms of the board, the founders, because companies I've seen, both recruiters, both law firms, sometimes in-house teams of parachuting people in to try and win work, to try and impress a client, to try and do something to show that they're committed, but that's taking the path of least resistance and doing it in a very much performative diversity prop type manner. So I think there needs to be more authentic engagement. I think we need to go to the root causes. Let's go to the suppliers. Let's have a look into and pull back the curtain from law firms, departments, and also the people that work with them. Like they're not accountable. So if an organization is going to say, I'm going to help with bringing in and helping to retain diverse lawyers, for example, then I'd expect questions to be asked about their own company. What are they doing? Why is it important to them? Because the messaging has to be consistent, and it has to be something that is looked at and undertaken in the right way. And then I think the last bit is probably drawing all stakeholders together. It would be including general counsels, managing and senior partners, and probably the heads of from different types of organizations, whether they're training providers, whether they're suppliers, vendors, however it's cut, and saying, look, let's tackle this as a tripartite stakeholder agreement. Let's not hit law firms over the head and say, you don't have enough black lawyers, so what are you doing? Let's not hit the general counsels over the head and say, well, you can influence change because you buy the services off the law firms. And let's not hit the suppliers over the head and say, well, what are you doing? Let's say, well, how can we collaborate as a three? Because I think that's probably the most powerful and the most long-lasting combination for change, in having those three factors working simultaneously together. Because ultimately that's how something successful has to happen. It can't be one of the three, it can't be two, probably. So that would be my advice to the regulators, to law firms, to GCs, is let's look at addressing this and actually get different sides around the table to talk about it and move it forwards at a much quicker rate of pace.
I completely agree. Having that kind of collaborative approach really does send that powerful message. And not only that, you've got lots of different perspectives having input, and you're really trying to drive that change. And it's not just about words, it is about creating action. So everything you said is hopefully people take a listen, and have a think. So around Black Lawyers Matter, would you be able to give us kind of your purpose behind it and drive to make a difference around this area?
Yeah, of course. So Black Lawyers Matter started life a couple of years ago, and the vision behind it is to try and promote Black lawyers within the legal profession, primarily in the UK, but with potential in the future that we will look at jurisdictions outside of England and Wales. The goal is to be very specific. So I've had lots of meetings with people that have said, this sounds great, but it's too channeled because it's just for Black lawyers, isn't it? And I say, yes, it is. And it's very proud to be specific. And I think you can absolutely look to hit diversity goals whilst being specific, because there are so many different strands across DE&I that are all incredibly important. But I think sometimes some groups can be lost when blankets are used. Blanket terminology, think of BAME, think of BME. That represents a hugely different group of people that are categorized based on essentially not being white. So for me, it was my own personal experiences and kind of background within the legal sector, combined with data in seeing that Black lawyers across the SRA and the Law Society are the least represented ethnicity group, of thinking this is really important to me and I want to make it so that everyone knows what it's about. So that the clue is in the title. And what we're trying to do is, through a number of different programs, a number of different engagement models, is to have conversations with partners at firms, with GCs, with heads of, with decision makers, and say, look, this is where we're up to in terms of data. And there are lots of different sources out there talking about data, talking about the number of Black partners, for example, or Black general counsels. And I try and take it back to kind of the most credible sources, which are the SRA and the Law Society. And these are the sources that are telling us that not enough is happening and there are not enough Black people in senior positions within the legal profession as a whole. So across our various programs, we are trying to support those people who are already in the profession, people who may be looking at entering the profession, but maybe haven't had a natural entry point, and we've got various programs to support those people. But then also there is the duality of purpose to some of our other programs, including the reverse mentoring digital platform, which is to try and cater for the 98% of lawyers. Because as I mentioned, there are 2% that are black, so therefore by default, 98% of lawyers in the UK are not black. And so our mentoring program is just as much for people who aren't black as for people who are black. So we pair people, so black students, graduates, and we're developing a second wave of the program. But at the moment, it's aspiring black lawyers get placed with a mentor from a law firm, from a legal department, from government body. Doesn't have to be a lawyer, but many people are. And the goal is that over a 12-month period, both sides get to learn from one another. So the mentees get access to someone they probably would not have had access to but for this program and platform. And the mentors, conversely, get to understand a bit more about someone's experience at an earlier stage. So we hope that this is more of a learning and development toolkit for law firms and legal departments. Conversely, the mentee is able to dictate what they would like to achieve. And that might be general things. It might be, how do I get better at public speaking? How do I improve my confidence? How do I apply and follow up to a law firm or a legal department? Or it might be specific around, how do I get a training contract? Once I've got a training contract, what do I do to make sure that I get a seat on qualification? All of these things. And again, the beauty of the program is it's for the individual to dictate what they would like the mentor to help with them. And the mentor is obliged to do that. But then because of their experience, we hope they can also add significant value in other ways. So again, what is Black Lawyers Matter and what's the purpose? It is kind of that, is to support both sides, to further the conversation and make it easier for busy law firm professionals, busy in-house professionals, busy professionals in general, to have more of an insight into some of the challenges that some of our pool of aspiring black lawyers face, and to be able to build that rapport and trust to help them over the course of a 12-month period, whilst also learning on the same by the same token.
You mentioned there about your the mentoring scheme that you guys have, and I think having a mentor is absolutely fantastic, and certainly having someone that you can go to that's in the profession, or maybe not in the profession, and kind of learning from them, and having, you know, someone you can go to with questions, and even trying to get a training contract, as you say, you know, can be very difficult. So being able to approach someone and kind of get that support is really, really valuable. In terms of obviously like Black Lawyers Matter, and you've touched upon the purpose, in terms of firms and kind of companies and getting involved in Black Lawyers Matter, what do you think they're really going to gain from participating and getting involved in this?
Understanding, I would say, more access to perhaps people that they would not have crossed paths with in normal day-to-day life. The opportunity to engage with more black aspiring legal talent at an earlier stage. And the mentoring program isn't designed to be a pipelining program. What it's designed to be is a way to learn about the black experience in law if you're not a black lawyer. Because a black lawyer will understand some of the challenges that black aspiring lawyers face because they've been in their shoes. Whereas someone that is not from that background may not understand some of the challenges involved. So it's really about learning and developing for people that participate to understand a bit more, to have that connection and be able to build a really good relationship with the mentee. It's to be able to understand some of the mentee challenges. And we've seen empirically that mentoring is one of the most enlightening things that someone can do from both a personal and also professional standpoint. So it's a way of showcasing support for black aspiring legal talent in a dedicated way that is hopefully very time efficient for both sides because it's digitalized, and whilst going through that process, hopefully being able to collaborate with other mentors from other firms, other companies, around shared experiences, of course, in a anonymized way. So, because what we want to do is to help move the conversation forward. Talk about action. What
Hmm.
what better action in a short frame of time is there than committing to an hour a month or so to be a mentor for someone who's Black that has never had a mentor? Like that's really powerful as a concept. And we're now almost a year in, and the feedback that we've had has been outstanding. And that's both sides, from mentees who have been able to get paired with someone. We've got law firms and top 20 law firms on there where senior partners or managing partners are part of the program. We've got in-house clients where the group general counsel is there, the managing director of legal. And these are people that are committing their time to understand, to learn. And I think that as a concept and a kind of indication of trust is huge, and it's really important as part of the journey that it's collaborative. I talked about that earlier with one of the other questions, and that for me is one of the most important things that people could get from this, is that opportunity to continue to learn into a space that they may not have necessarily felt particularly comfortable talking about. They may have wanted to make a difference, but didn't really know the best way in order to do that. So we've tried to create this platform so that there is a safe space for people to have conversations, sometimes awkward and difficult, where they can hopefully learn as a result.
Looking forward, I know we have briefly spoken about this, but what do you want to happen? So obviously we've talked about the collaborative approach, but from a personal perspective and for others maybe wanting to get involved, what kind of advice would you give to others in trying to get involved and trying to, create that action and make those steps?
I would say a kind of herd mentality mindset really
Hmm.
helps, and some of the most persuasive ways in which action can be formed often comes from a collective. So if people are looking to be involved, then I would say try and get other people from your firm or your department or your organization, try and give them that understanding of the purpose and the why, because I
Hmm.
think we've certainly found over the last 9 months or so, when we were starting off with this, it was quite hard to engage with firms, with people, because we didn't have anything to show. We had an
Hmm.
idea, we had a vision, we had a concept. Whereas now, if you fast forward 8, 9 months, we can go, well, here are hundreds of people that are on the platform. Here are testimonials from law firms. Here are testimonials from government bodies. Here are testimonials from FTSE 100 businesses around the impact that this has had on their lawyers who are mentors. And then on the other side, look, here's the impact that this has had and having on people who are mentees. Someone that has no network in law previously, but has now been introduced to 10 different lawyers by his or her mentee. Like, that is brilliant. So look, I think if people are looking or interested in understanding more about the Black experience in law, if people are interested in pushing forwards and making a difference, if people are interested in understanding about what this program does and some of the ways that it can help benefit, then I would encourage you to speak to others within your organization and present it to senior partner, the managing partner, the general counsel, because we welcome people from all backgrounds on the platform. And by default, anyone that is probably listening to this will be employed or soon to be employed, and
Hmm.
has therefore gone through a number of different exercises to get to that phase. And some of the people that we have as mentees are not looking for necessarily advice on how to get a TC, but it might be around things that you'd probably take for granted, as would I, about obtaining a job, about
Hmm.
presenting your CV, about speaking, about doing a group exercise, whatever it may be. So I think for me, that's really where one of the biggest draws of this program is that, yes, it's called Black Lawyers Matter because that's the space in which we operate. And we've got lots of lawyers on the platform, but we also have lots of very committed non-lawyers on the platform as mentors. So we welcome diversity of mentorship as part of the learning experience, because we have people that say, look, I'm not sure if I want to be a lawyer. Actually, maybe I'd like to go into a non-fee earning role within a particular firm or particular company, or Maybe it's something kind of behind the scenes. It might be HR, it might be D&I, it might be marketing, IT, whatever it is, bids. So having that breadth of mentorship is really important. And I guess for us, it's about hopefully speaking to the people that make decisions at your organization, saying, look, there are lots of things out there. There's lots of talk, still lots of talk. A couple of years on, here is a way to make a direct impact to the Black legal cause in the UK very quickly.
Before we kind of close up today, I just wanted to see whether, you have any kind of final remarks that you just wanted to reiterate to others before we just close up for today.
Final remark, I would say, look, it doesn't have to be me and it doesn't have to be us. There are a number of businesses that operate in this kind of space within the legal sector. So I'm always going to be a big fan of the things that we're doing necessarily and naturally. But I would say for companies, for firms, depending on what you're looking to do and why you're looking to do it, have a chat with some businesses that are either in your supply chain or in your wider kind of sphere of influence, see what they can do. Like, what are their, test them a bit, give them an opportunity, because lots of diverse owned businesses tend to be quite small. So they're out there, the same as when people say to me, well, there's no diverse lawyers out there. I say, but if you're looking in the same pool, then you're never going to find them. But I would encourage firms, companies, individuals at all stages of your career, if this is something that is of interest to you in driving action, making a difference, then speak to someone at your firm. Feel free to reach out if you want any more information from me, but give someone a go and commit to giving an organization or a program a go over the next 3 months and see what happens. Because far too often, pledges, diversity task force, statements operate in isolation and in a vacuum in October of each year, and then nothing happens. They're put on the shelf for the next 11 months. And my messaging is immovable. My messaging hasn't changed. And I do a lot more talking in the other 11 months of the year than I do in Black History Month, because for me, talking in Black History Month is too late. As I said earlier, it's about the action that happens over the course of the year, every single week, every month. It isn't about parachuting someone in and hoping for the best. It isn't about taking on an intern, posting on LinkedIn, tagging people in and going, aren't we great? Aren't we doing our bit? It's about doing lots of different things at different levels consistently. That's how cultures are influenced. That's how change tends to happen. Change doesn't happen with one-off gestures because people can see it. It's this basic tokenism. Change happens where the mission and the culture of a particular organization are actually aligned with where they say they are. And that for me is really important. So yeah, my closing bit would be, if you have an opportunity and you want to make a difference in this particular space, feel free to have a chat with us. Feel free to pass our details on, speak to people from your firm, your company, and give someone a go in the next 3 months. Doesn't have to be us, but obviously we'd welcome it if it is.
Thank you so much, Sam. And as you say, I really do hope that people start taking action and kind of get on board, and start collaborating and actually making a difference, as opposed to just using words all the time. I'd really like to thank you for taking the time to kind of speak with me about this today.
Appreciate you having me on.
And it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks very much.